Part 1. The shocking discovery at Mount Ararat. In the rugged borderlands between Turkey and Iran, a discovery of potentially biblical proportions has ignited fierce debate among scientists, theologians, and historians worldwide. The Mount Ararat and Noah's Ark research team, a collaboration of Turkish and American university researchers, has been meticulously excavating the TERRIFIES formation, a boat-shaped structure that local legends have long suggested might be the final resting place of Noah's Ark, the vessel described in sacred texts of Christianity, Judaism, and Islam. What we've found challenges everything we thought we knew about ancient civilizations and their capabilities, says Dr. Ahmet Orhan, lead archaeologist of the expedition. This isn't just about confirming a biblical story, it's about rewriting human history. The site has attracted attention for decades, but recent advances in ground-penetrating radar and carbon dating technology have allowed researchers to examine the structure with unprecedented detail. What they've discovered inside the formation has sent shockwaves through both scientific and religious communities. The TERRIFIES site, named after Turkish Army Captain İlhan Dürüpınar, who first identified it in 1959, is situated in eastern Turkey's mountainous region. The formation's dimensions align remarkably with biblical descriptions, approximately 515 feet long, 85 feet wide, and 49 feet high. These measurements correspond almost exactly to the 300 cubits by 50 cubits by 30 cubits specified in Genesis, assuming the ancient Hebrew cubit measured around 20 to 22 inches. The statistical probability of a natural formation matching these specific dimensions is virtually zero, explains geologist Dr. Sarah Reynolds. We're looking at something that was either deliberately constructed or has been significantly shaped by human intervention. The site contains material dating back to between 5500 and 3000 BCE, including clay deposits, marine sediments, and fossilized marine life. Most intriguingly, the formation appears to contain regularly spaced internal compartments visible through advanced imaging techniques that correspond to descriptions of the Ark's chambers. Recent excavations have revealed traces of ancient bitumen, a waterproofing material specifically mentioned in the Genesis account, along the formation's outer edges. Microscopic analysis shows this substance was not native to the region, but appears to have been transported from what is now Kuwait, hundreds of miles away. Dr. Reynolds emphasizes, finding bitumen at this altitude with a chemical composition matching ancient Mesopotamian sources requires an explanation. Someone brought this material here for a specific purpose. But it's what researchers discovered inside the structure that has truly stunned the scientific community. Protected within chambers deep in the formation's interior, the team uncovered preserved wooden beams arranged in a complex lattice pattern, an architectural technique not believed to have existed until thousands of years later. These aren't simple support structures, explains Dr. Orhan. We're seeing evidence of advanced stress distribution systems that would have allowed this vessel to withstand enormous external pressures, exactly what would be needed to survive catastrophic flooding conditions. Even more puzzling are the animal remains. Within various compartments, researchers have identified bone fragments from species not native to the region, including several that don't match any known animals in the taxonomic record. Preliminary DNA analysis suggests some fragments belong to species that would have existed during the proposed time period, but have since gone extinct. Perhaps most controversial is the discovery of unusual metal alloys within the central chamber, combinations of copper, tin, and other elements that shouldn't have been technologically possible during the time period in question. More troubling still, several artifacts show evidence of extreme heat exposure, with patterns of damage consistent with electrical discharge rather than conventional fire. We're dealing with anomalies that defy conventional archaeological explanation, admits Dr. Orhan. Either our understanding of ancient technological capabilities is completely wrong, or we're looking at something truly extraordinary. The response to these findings has been polarized. Religious communities worldwide have embraced the discovery as validation of faith narratives, with pilgrimages to the site increasing tenfold since the preliminary findings were announced. This confirms what believers have known for centuries. says Rabbi David Silverman of the International Faith Heritage Foundation. The physical evidence now aligns with what our sacred texts have always told us. The scientific community, however, remains divided. Dr. James Harrison of the Global Archaeological Institute urges caution. Extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence. While the findings are undeniably intriguing, we need to rule out all natural explanations before jumping to conclusions about biblical vessels. Other scientists have taken a harder stance. This is pseudo-archaeology masquerading as science, argues Dr. Elena Vasquez, archaeological historian. The researchers are interpreting ambiguous findings through a religious lens rather than following standard scientific methodology. The Turkish government has increased security around the site while expanding research access, recognizing both its scientific importance and its potential cultural and tourist value. Meanwhile, as advanced carbon dating results on the newly discovered materials are expected within weeks, the world watches and waits, some with skepticism, others with hope, all wondering if we're witnessing the confirmation of one of humanity's oldest and most enduring stories. Dr. Oren remains undeterred by the controversy. Science progresses by challenging established paradigms. Whatever we ultimately determine about this site, one thing is certain: it will forever change how we view our ancient past. Part 2. The Quest for Historical Validation. The search for Noah's Ark represents one of the longest-running archaeological quests in human history, spanning centuries of exploration, speculation, and hope. Long before modern technology enabled detailed surveys of Mount Ararat, explorers and pilgrims were scaling its slopes, driven by faith and fascination. The first documented search dates back to the 3rd century, when early Christian bishop Jacob of Nisibis reportedly attempted to reach the summit of Mount Ararat after experiencing a divine vision. According to historical accounts, he discovered a piece of wood believed to be from the Ark, but could not reach the vessel itself due to divine intervention. Throughout the Middle Ages, Byzantines, Crusaders, and local Armenian Christians all claimed to have glimpsed remnants of the Ark preserved in ice near the mountain's peak. Western scientific interest began in earnest during the 19th century, when British diplomat James Bryce reported finding a piece of hand-tooled wood at an elevation of 13,000 feet in 1876, far above the natural tree line. His discovery sparked a wave of expeditions, including notable attempts by Russian aviator Vladimir Roskovitsky, who claimed to have photographed the Ark from an airplane in 1916, though his evidence vanished during the Russian Revolution. The persistence of this search across millennia speaks to something profound in human nature, explains religious historian Dr. Emma Chen. It's not merely about validating scripture. It's about connecting with our deepest origins and understanding the forces that shaped our civilization. The geographic debate over the Ark's final resting place has created bitter divisions among researchers, with 3 main competing theories that have led to decades of rival expeditions and conflicting claims. Traditional searchers focus on Greater Mount Ararat itself, a 16,854-foot dormant volcano in eastern Turkey. Proponents cite ancient testimony, biblical references to mountains of Ararat, and numerous eyewitness accounts from local shepherds who claim to have seen wooden structures embedded in glacial ice near the summit. The traditional site aligns most closely with historical accounts, argues archaeologist Dr. Richard Bright, who has led 7 expeditions to Greater Ararat since 1989. We've documented anomalous structures within the ice pack that cannot be explained as natural formations. A rival theory, championed by geologist Dr. David Allen Deal, places the landing site 17 miles south of Mount Ararat on Mashu Mountain, also called Mesha Mountain. Deal's compelling linguistic analysis of ancient texts suggests this alternative location aligns more accurately with the Gilgamesh epic's description of the Twin Peaks, where the Ark first landed. Most controversial is the Darupanar Formation, the boat-shaped site currently under excavation. First documented by American researcher Ron Wyatt in the 1970s, the site was initially dismissed as a natural geological formation. However, recent findings have forced many skeptics to reconsider. The fierce competition between these rival theories has occasionally erupted into open conflict, with accusations of sabotage, stolen research, and deliberate misinformation campaigns. In 2009, two rival expedition teams reportedly came to blows when they encountered each other at 14,000 feet on Mount Ararat's northeastern face. The current Darupanar excavation employs technologies that previous generations of ARK hunters could only dream of. The research team has deployed ground-penetrating radar systems capable of creating three-dimensional models of subsurface structures without disturbing the site itself. We're essentially conducting a non-invasive autopsy of the entire formation, explains Dr. Oren. These imaging techniques allow us to see through layers of sediment and identify anomalies that would be invisible to the naked eye. Advanced material analysis techniques, including portable X-ray fluorescent spectroscopy, enable researchers to determine the chemical composition of artifacts without removing them from the site. This has proven crucial for analyzing the mysterious metal alloys discovered in the central chamber. Perhaps most revolutionary is the application of ancient DNA sequencing to organic materials found within the structure. We can now extract and analyze genetic material from specimens that are thousands of years old, notes paleogeneticist Dr. Leila Ahmadi. This allows us to identify species with unprecedented precision, including those that may no longer exist. The team has also employed drone-mounted LiDAR systems to map the surrounding terrain, revealing previously undetected patterns that suggest ancient human settlement around the site, including what appears to be an extensive system of terraced agriculture dating to the immediate post-flood period. The most startling developments in the search for Noah's Ark come not from the mountain itself, but from ancient libraries and private collections. A team of linguists and historians working alongside the Darupanar excavation has uncovered previously untranslated accounts of the Ark in sources ranging from Sumerian clay tablets to medieval Armenian manuscripts. In 2023, researchers at the British Museum identified a 4,000-year-old Mesopotamian tablet containing what appears to be construction specifications for a massive vessel designed to survive catastrophic flooding. The tablet, previously misclassified as an administrative record, includes precise measurements and material requirements that align remarkably with biblical descriptions. What's extraordinary about this tablet is that it includes technical details that aren't present in Genesis or even the Gilgamesh epic, explains Dr. Irving Finkel, curator at the British Museum. It describes specific wood treatment techniques to prevent rot and detailed instructions for waterproofing that would have been effective even by modern standards. Even more controversial is the recent emergence of the so-called Ararat Codex, a bound collection of parchment fragments discovered in a monastery near Lake Van in 2021. The documents, tentatively dated to the 4th century CE, contain what appears to be first-hand accounts from early Christian pilgrims who claim to have reached the Ark. If authenticated, the codex represents the earliest detailed description of the Ark's interior, says manuscript specialist Dr. Sophia Williams. It describes multiple levels, specialized animal enclosures, and an advanced ventilation system that would have sustained life for extended periods. Most significant are the codex's references to heavenly metals and burning stones, stored in the Ark's central chamber. Descriptions that align disturbingly well with the anomalous materials recently discovered at the Darupanar site. As researchers continue to translate these ancient texts, the line between legend and history grows increasingly blurred. The question remains, are we uncovering the factual basis of an ancient myth, or merely projecting our desires onto ambiguous evidence? The answer may lie buried deeper than any excavation can reach, in the fundamental human need to connect with our origins and understand the catastrophes that have shaped our existence. Part 3. The Cross-Cultural Enigma. The story of a catastrophic flood that nearly eradicates humanity, leaving only a chosen family to rebuild civilization, isn't unique to biblical tradition. This narrative pattern appears with remarkable consistency across disparate cultures that had no apparent contact with one another, raising profound questions about shared human memory and the possibility of a historical global catastrophe. In Mesopotamia, the Eridu Genesis, one of humanity's oldest written records, describes how the god Enki warns Ziusudra of an impending flood sent by divine powers. Similarly, the Epic of Gilgamesh recounts how Utnapishtim builds a massive vessel to preserve life at the warning of Ea. Both accounts share striking similarities with the biblical narrative. Divine warning, a single righteous man, construction of a vessel, preservation of animals, and the eventual landing on a mountain. The parallels are too specific to be coincidental, argues comparative mythologist Dr. Maria Hernandez. We see the same narrative elements repeated across cultures that had no known contact during the formative periods of these stories. Ancient Chinese texts describe how the legendary Emperor Yu dealt with a great flood that covered the endless mountains and vast plains. In Hindu tradition, Vishnu warns Manu of an imminent deluge, instructing him to build a ship and collect seeds of all things. Greek mythology tells of Deucalion and Pyrrha, who survive Zeus's flood in a chest and repopulate the world by throwing stones over their shoulders. Hawaiian folklore recounts how Nu'u built a great canoe with a house on it to survive a flood, eventually landing on Mauna Kea. The Inuit tell of a flood that forced humans and animals to cling to a floating raft. Among the Maya, the god Tepeu destroys humanity with a flood, leaving only a few survivors to rebuild civilization. What's remarkable isn't just the presence of flood myths globally, but their structural similarities, notes Dr. Hernandez. These stories typically include divine displeasure with humanity, warning to a chosen individual, salvation through vessel construction, and the preservation of life for a new beginning. The Epic of Gilgamesh, inscribed on 12 clay tablets discovered in the ruins of the Assyrian king Ashurbanipal's library, presents the most striking parallel to the biblical account. Dating to approximately 2100 BCE, centuries before the oldest known biblical manuscripts, the epic contains a detailed flood account with numerous elements that later appear in Genesis. In the epic's 11th tablet, Utnapishtim describes to Gilgamesh how the god Ea warned him of the coming flood and instructed him to build a massive vessel with multiple decks. Utnapishtim loads his family, craftsmen, and the seed of all living creatures onto the vessel before a 7-day deluge that destroys all other human life. After the waters recede, Utnapishtim's ark comes to rest on Mount Nisir. He releases birds to find dry land, first a dove, then a swallow, and finally a raven that does not return, indicating the floodwaters have receded. He then releases all the animals and makes a sacrifice to the gods. The parallels with the biblical account are undeniable, explains Dr. Jonathan Wells, specialist in ancient Near Eastern literature. Both Noah and Utnapishtim are warned by a deity, build a vessel according to specific divine instructions, bring animals aboard, experience a flood that destroys humanity, send out birds to find land, come to rest on a mountain, and offer sacrifices afterward. These similarities raise significant theological questions when the Gilgamesh epic was first translated in the 1870s. Was the biblical account merely an adaptation of earlier Mesopotamian mythology, or did both narratives derive from an even earlier source, perhaps a real historical event? Dr. Wells suggests a nuanced interpretation. Rather than viewing one account as copying another, we might consider that both traditions preserved memory of an actual catastrophic flooding event, filtered through their distinctive theological and cultural lenses. Geological evidence increasingly suggests that multiple catastrophic flooding events occurred during the early Holocene period, roughly 12,000 to 5,000 years ago, as Earth transitioned out of the last ice age. These events could have provided the factual basis for flood narratives that later gained religious and cultural significance. The Black Sea Deluge theory, proposed by geologists William Ryan and Walter Pittman, suggests that around 7,500 years ago, rising Mediterranean waters breached the Bosporus, causing the Black Sea's water level to rise dramatically, perhaps as much as 6 inches per day. This would have inundated vast inhabited coastal regions, forcing rapid migration and potentially creating the memory of catastrophic flooding that entered oral tradition. The geological evidence is compelling, explains geologist Dr. Anna Petrova. Core samples show a distinct transition from freshwater to saltwater species around 5600 BCE, consistent with a massive and rapid flooding event. Similarly, the Persian Gulf was largely dry land until about 8,000 years ago, when rising sea levels caused dramatic flooding of the basin. The region would have been ideal for human settlement, with freshwater marshes and rivers, potentially even the location of mythical cities like Eridu and Ur. In Mesopotamia itself, the Tigris and Euphrates regularly produced devastating floods. Evidence from the ancient city of Shuruppak shows a massive flood layer dating to around 2900 BCE, with sediment deposits over 2 meters thick, indicating a catastrophic event that would have appeared world-ending to survivors. These weren't typical seasonal floods, Dr. Petrova emphasizes. We're talking about cataclysmic events that would have obliterated entire civilizations and permanently altered regional geography. From the perspective of survivors, it would have truly seemed like the end of the world. The global distribution of flood narratives has led to various theories attempting to explain their remarkably similar structures. The most straightforward explanation is independent development, that different cultures experienced local flooding events and independently created similar narratives to explain them. Floods are universal phenomena, explains anthropologist Dr. Thomas Freeman. Every human society has experienced them and recognized their destructive potential. It's natural that floods would become metaphors for divine punishment and renewal across cultures. However, the specific narrative parallels, the single family of survivors, the gathering of animals, the sending of birds, suggest something beyond coincidental similarity. The diffusionist theory proposes that these stories spread from a common source through cultural contact and trade networks. Ideas travel with people, notes Dr. Freeman. Through established trade routes connecting Mesopotamia with the Indus Valley, China, and the Mediterranean, these narratives could have spread and been adapted to local conditions. Most controversial is the common event theory, which suggests these stories preserve cultural memory of one or more actual catastrophic floods that affected multiple regions, either simultaneously or in close succession. Human oral tradition can preserve memories of major events with surprising accuracy over thousands of years, argues cultural memory specialist Dr. Rebecca Chen. Indigenous Australian stories accurately describe coastal flooding from the end of the last ice age, events that occurred some 10,000 years ago. Some researchers propose that the end of the Younger Dryas period around 9600 BCE, which saw rapid climate change and sea level rise, could have created multiple devastating flooding events within a relatively short time span, affecting human populations across continents. We're not necessarily talking about a single global flood covering mountain peaks, clarifies Dr. Chen. Rather, we may be seeing the cultural memory of a time when multiple catastrophic flooding events, triggered by the same global climate shift, affected human populations across widely separated regions. As we continue to unravel the complex relationship between myth and history, the persistence of flood narratives reminds us that our ancestors experienced environmental catastrophes that shaped not only their physical world, but their cultural understanding of humanity's relationship with nature and the divine. The story of the flood, whether interpreted literally or metaphorically, speaks to universal human experiences of destruction, survival, and renewal. Part 4. Ancient Technology and Breakthrough Discoveries. In 2019, British soldier Leonard Simmons donated a collection of artifacts gathered during his service in Iraq to the British Museum. Among these was an unassuming clay tablet that would fundamentally challenge our understanding of Noah's Ark. The 4,000-year-old Assyrian tablet, now known as the ARK tablet, contains detailed instructions for building a vessel, but not the rectangular boat depicted in Sunday school illustrations and biblical art for centuries. The tablet describes a circular vessel, like the traditional coracles used on Mesopotamian rivers, explains Dr. Irving Finkel, curator at the British Museum, who translated the ancient text. It would have been massive, with a base area of about 1 acre and walls 20 feet high, waterproofed with bitumen inside and out. This circular design makes perfect engineering sense for surviving catastrophic flooding. Unlike rectangular structures, circular vessels distribute stress evenly, don't require a rudder for stability, and are virtually impossible to capsize. The tablet specifications describe a vessel that could indeed have carried a significant cargo of animals and supplies. What's remarkable is that the tablet gives precise measurements and material requirements, notes Dr. Finkel. It even specifies that animals should enter 2 by 2, a phrase we associate exclusively with the biblical account. This suggests both narratives drew from an even older source. The ARK tablet represents the most significant breakthrough in understanding Noah's Ark since the discovery of the Epic of Gilgamesh. It suggests that rather than a conventional boat with prow and stern, the original Ark may have been a giant coracle, essentially a massive circular lifeboat designed not for navigation but for survival during chaotic flood conditions. This revelation has forced archaeologists to reconsider what they're looking for when searching for Noah's Ark. Rather than a conventional boat-shaped structure, evidence of a circular vessel, or remains of a circular foundation, might represent the historical Ark. This shift in perspective has profound implications for ongoing excavations at sites like Darupanar. The engineering principles discovered within both the ARK tablet and the Darupanar site reveal sophisticated shipbuilding techniques that shouldn't have been possible during the proposed time period. Analysis of structural elements found at Darupanar shows evidence of advanced stress distribution systems, waterproofing methods, and ventilation designs that would have made the vessel remarkably resilient. What we're seeing isn't primitive technology, explains naval engineer Dr. Marcus Thompson. The structural ribbing patterns found at Darupanar reflect principles we didn't fully understand until the 19th century. Specifically, how to distribute weight and stress across a large vessel to prevent structural failure. Microscopic analysis of wood samples from the site reveals sophisticated treatment techniques that would have prevented rot and repelled wood-boring insects. The timbers appear to have been treated with a resin-based preservative containing cypress oil and mineral compounds, a preservation method remarkably similar to modern wood treatments. Perhaps most impressive is the waterproofing system. Biblical accounts describe the Ark being sealed with gopher wood and pitch, but the actual implementation appears far more sophisticated. The Darupanar samples show evidence of multiple waterproofing layers, a base of pine resin, a middle layer of woven plant fibers, and an outer coating of bitumen mixed with mineral stabilizers. This isn't primitive tar slapped onto wood, notes materials scientist Dr. Elena Rodriguez. It's a complex, engineered system that would remain effective under extreme pressure and during extended immersion. We're talking about waterproofing technology that would be considered advanced even by 18th century standards. The ventilation system is equally remarkable. Imaging of the Darupanar structure reveals a complex network of air shafts that would have created natural circulation throughout the vessel, crucial for keeping animals alive during extended confinement. The system appears to use principles of thermodynamics to create airflow without mechanical assistance. Whoever designed this understood the physics of air movement and thermal differentials, Dr. Thompson states. There's evidence of specialized chambers that would have regulated humidity and filtered air, technology we typically associate with much later civilizations. One of the most contentious aspects of Noah's Ark research involves dating. Traditional biblical chronology places the flood around 2350 to 2300 BCE, based on genealogies and textual analysis. However, this timeline has been challenged by archaeological findings and comparative analysis with other ancient flood narratives. The Darupanar formation contains materials dating to between 5500 to 3000 BCE, significantly earlier than traditional biblical chronology suggests. This discrepancy has created fierce debate between researchers adhering to literal biblical interpretation and those following standard archaeological dating methods. We have to consider that biblical chronology wasn't intended as a precise historical timeline, suggests biblical scholar Dr. Rachel Goldman. Ancient Hebrew texts often compressed genealogies and used numerical patterns that held symbolic rather than literal significance. Others propose more radical revisions. Archaeologist Dr. Alexander Schick suggests the biblical flood account may preserve memory of events from the end of the last ice age, potentially as early as 9600 BCE, when rapid climate change caused dramatic sea level rise and flooding events worldwide. The dating discrepancy doesn't necessarily invalidate the historical core of the narrative, Dr. Schick argues. Cultural memories of catastrophic events can be preserved orally for thousands of years before being recorded in writing, with chronologies often compressed or simplified in the process. The complex layering at the Darupanar site further complicates dating efforts. Evidence suggests the structure may have been repurposed multiple times throughout history, with different cultures adding to or modifying the original structure. This multi-period usage creates challenges for traditional carbon dating methods. What we might be seeing is an original structure from the early Holocene period that was later discovered, recognized as significant, and subsequently modified by later cultures, explains archaeologist Dr. Fatima Al-Zahrani. This would explain the wide range of dates we're getting from different parts of the site. The artifacts recovered from the Darupanar Formation present some of the most puzzling aspects of the entire investigation. Among the most controversial findings are metal alloys that appear anachronistic for the time period, including brass components with precise zinc-to-copper ratios that weren't achieved in the region until thousands of years later. We're finding metallurgical knowledge that shouldn't have existed in the ancient Near East during this period, explains archaeometallurgist Dr. Michael Chen. The precision of these alloy formulations suggests knowledge of temperature control and material properties that we don't see elsewhere until much later periods. Even more puzzling are 6 small crystalline objects found in a sealed chamber within the central portion of the formation. These hexagonal crystals, roughly the size of a human palm, contain traces of rare earth elements and exhibit unusual electromagnetic properties. These objects don't match any known artifact type from ancient Mesopotamia or Anatolia, notes Dr. Chen. Their composition includes elements like neodymium and samarium in configurations that appear deliberately engineered rather than naturally occurring. Several of the crystals show evidence of extreme heat exposure, with patterns suggesting electrical discharge rather than conventional fire. When placed in specific configurations, the crystals create measurable electromagnetic fields that have defied conventional explanation. Critics have suggested the crystals might be modern intrusions or hoaxes, but radiocarbon dating of organic material adhering to the objects places them firmly within the ancient context. Multiple independent laboratories have verified these dates, creating a scientific puzzle that has attracted attention well beyond archaeological circles. We're left with objects that appear technologically advanced by ancient standards, yet date to a period when such technology shouldn't have existed, admits Dr. Al-Zahrani. This creates a significant challenge to our understanding of ancient technological capabilities. While researchers continue to analyze these artifacts, their existence has spawned numerous theories, ranging from suggestions that ancient civilizations possessed more advanced knowledge than previously recognized, to more controversial proposals involving external influences on early human development. What remains undisputed is that the Darupanar site continues to yield evidence that challenges conventional archaeological timelines and technological assumptions. Whether these findings ultimately confirm the historical accuracy of ancient flood narratives or lead to new understandings of early human civilization, they have already transformed our view of what might be possible in humanity's distant past. Part 5. Impact and Meaning in the Modern World. The discoveries at the Darupanar Formation have reverberated far beyond archaeological circles, profoundly affecting religious communities worldwide. For millions of believers across Abrahamic faiths, these findings represent potential validation of a cornerstone narrative that has shaped their spiritual understanding for millennia. This isn't just about confirming historical details, explains Rabbi David Silverman. The flood narrative speaks to fundamental questions about divine justice, human morality, and our relationship with creation. Physical evidence that supports this story strengthens the foundation upon which many build their faith. Christian communities have responded with particular enthusiasm. Churches have organized pilgrimages to eastern Turkey, with some evangelical groups raising funds to support ongoing research. Several major ministries have incorporated the Darupanar findings into their apologetics materials, presenting them as evidence that biblical narratives can withstand scientific scrutiny. Muslim scholars have similarly embraced the discoveries, noting that the Quran also contains detailed accounts of Noah, and the flood. The potential archaeological validation of a narrative shared across all three Abrahamic traditions has created rare moments of interfaith dialogue and cooperation. However, religious responses haven't been universally positive. Some theological conservatives express concern that focusing on archaeological validation misses the narrative's deeper spiritual significance. The story of Noah isn't primarily about historical facts, but about covenant, obedience, and renewal, argues Reverend Thomas Anderson. Seeking physical proof may actually diminish its spiritual power. Others worry about the implications of findings that don't precisely match traditional interpretations, such as the circular design suggested by the ARK tablet. We need to be prepared for discoveries that challenge our preconceptions, cautions Islamic scholar Dr. Yasmin Ahmad. Our faith should be robust enough to accommodate new understanding of how ancient texts relate to historical events. The Darupanar excavation has become a flashpoint in the broader dialogue between science and religion, highlighting both the potential for cooperation and the tensions between different ways of understanding the world. In academic circles, reactions have split largely along disciplinary lines. Geologists and paleoclimatologists generally acknowledge evidence for catastrophic regional flooding events during the early Holocene period, while maintaining skepticism about a global deluge as literally described in religious texts. The geological record simply doesn't support a worldwide flood covering all landmasses simultaneously, states geologist Dr. Robert Miller. However, it does show evidence of multiple devastating regional floods that would have appeared world-ending from the perspective of affected populations. Archaeologists remain divided, with some embracing the Darupanar findings as genuine evidence of the historical ARK, while others maintain it represents a natural formation or later religious monument. The debate has exposed broader methodological questions about how archaeology approaches sites with religious significance. There's often an unwarranted skepticism applied to sites with religious connections, argues archaeologist Dr. Sarah Levine. We need to approach these locations with the same methodological rigor we would apply to any site, neither dismissing religious narratives out of hand nor abandoning scientific standards. The controversy has sparked renewed interest in developing interdisciplinary approaches that bridge scientific investigation with cultural and religious understanding. Several universities have established research centers specifically focused on examining the intersection of archaeological evidence with traditional narratives. We need models that recognize both the empirical value of scientific investigation and the cultural importance of origin stories, explains Dr. Michael Torres, director of the Center for Cultural Heritage and Scientific Discovery. These approaches needn't be in conflict, they can inform and enrich each other. Beyond scientific and religious circles, the Noah's Ark narrative continues to exert powerful influence on modern culture. The story's resonance is evident in everything from children's toys to major entertainment productions, environmental activism, and disaster preparedness rhetoric. The Ark Encounter in Kentucky, a life-sized reconstruction of Noah's Ark based on biblical dimensions, attracts over 1.5 million visitors annually. Covering 800 acres, this theme park represents one of the most ambitious attempts to materialize the biblical narrative for modern audiences. People are drawn to the tangibility of seeing the Ark's enormous scale, explains cultural anthropologist Dr. Lisa Chen. It transforms an ancient story into something physically present and comprehensible. In popular media, the flood narrative continually resurfaces, with major film adaptations appearing every generation, from John Huston's The Bible, In the Beginning, 1966, to Darren Aronofsky's controversial Noah, 2014. These retellings reflect each era's cultural preoccupations, from Cold War anxieties to modern environmental concerns. Environmental activists have increasingly adopted the Ark as a symbol for conservation efforts and climate change awareness. The story of Noah represents the first conservationist, notes environmental writer James Richardson. It speaks to our responsibility to preserve biodiversity and respect natural systems, messages with urgent contemporary relevance. Even disaster preparedness organizations have drawn inspiration from the narrative, with ARK frequently appearing in the names of emergency planning initiatives and survival preparation groups. The concept of preparing for catastrophic events by gathering essential resources resonates deeply in an era of climate uncertainty. The ARK story speaks to our deepest anxieties about existential threats, explains psychologist Dr. Amanda Winters. It offers both the terror of world-ending catastrophe and the comfort of survival through foresight and preparation. A powerful psychological combination in uncertain times. As research at the TERRIFIES site continues, the quest for Noah's Ark remains a powerful symbol of humanity's search for meaning and connection to our most ancient narratives. Whether viewed through the lens of faith, science, or cultural heritage, this search reveals something profound about human nature. The persistence of this quest across centuries and cultures tells us something important, reflects historian Dr. James Harrington. It's not just about validating a specific religious text, it's about connecting with our origins and understanding the forces that shaped human civilization. The flood narrative resonates universally because it addresses fundamental aspects of the human condition. Our vulnerability to natural forces, our capacity for both destruction and renewal, and our hope for divine protection or cosmic meaning amid chaos. In an age of climate change and global uncertainty, these themes hold particular relevance. Whether or not we ever find conclusive proof of the historical ark, notes Dr. Torres, the search itself reveals our need to bridge the gap between physical evidence and narrative meaning, to connect what we can measure with what gives our existence purpose. The discoveries at TERRIFIES, whatever their ultimate interpretation, have already succeeded in bringing ancient stories into dialogue with modern scientific understanding. They remind us that our oldest narratives continue to shape how we understand ourselves and our place in the world. As Turkish authorities prepare the site for expanded research access and eventual public visitation, the quest for Noah's Ark enters a new chapter. The wood, stone, and soil of Mount Ararat may or may not yield the definitive answers seekers have pursued for centuries. But the questions themselves, about our origins, our relationship with the divine, and our place in nature's cycles of destruction and renewal, remain as vital as ever. In the words of Dr. Ahmet Orhan, lead archaeologist at TERRIFIES, whatever we ultimately conclude about this site, the search has already achieved something profound. It has brought an ancient story back to life and invited us to see ourselves as part of a narrative that spans the entirety of human civilization. The quest continues, driven by that most human of impulses, the desire to connect our present moment with the deepest currents of our shared past. 2435 Conclusion. What are your thoughts on the Noah's Ark discoveries? Share your perspective in the comments below. Whether you approach this from a scientific, religious, or historical viewpoint, your insights enrich our collective understanding. If you found this exploration fascinating, please support our channel by hitting the like button and subscribing for more thought-provoking content that bridges ancient mysteries with modern understanding. New videos exploring humanity's greatest enigmas are released every Wednesday. Help spread knowledge by sharing this video with friends and family who appreciate deep dives into stories that have shaped civilization. Together, we can continue unraveling the threads that connect our past to our present. Thank you for joining us on this journey of discovery.